So I want you to picture something just for a second. You find yourself in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. Maybe you step into the lobby of Trump Tower, and you're just immediately, well, you're enveloped in this atmosphere of, let's call it, exaggerated luxury.
The signature gold plating everywhere.
The gold, the marble, this overwhelming sense of commerce.
It's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
And if you look a little closer, you might see people, tourists buying all sorts of branded items.
Red hats.
The ubiquitous red hats, or maybe something a little less practical, like a gold foil wrapped chocolate bar.
Right.
On the surface, it's just retail. It's just tourism. But what the sources we've been reviewing suggest is that you're actually standing in a living, breathing case study.
A case study of what, though?
Of one of the strangest, most complex financial paradoxes of the last 50 years.
That image you painted is, I think, the perfect entry point for this. Because this deep dive is aimed squarely at that mystery. The one that has, it's baffled Wall Street analysts, it's stymied investigative journalists.
And it's fueled political debate for decades.
For decades, the true nature of Donald Trump's wealth. The question, if you simplify it, is really this. Are we looking at a legitimate Midas-touch billionaire? Or is the entire structure a sophisticated, decades-long exercise in leveraging debt and pure perception?
And what our sources make absolutely clear is that you simply cannot resolve that paradox using traditional accounting standards. You just can't.
No.
If you approach this with a traditional P&L statement, looking for cash flow and hard assets, the math simply doesn't compute.
It never has.
And you'll always conclude that the entire structure is, well, on the verge of collapse. The mission for us today, for you, is to show why that traditional view might be, well, flawed.
The key insight, and this is the fundamental shift in perspective that you have to make, is this. To accurately gauge the financial reality here, we have to abandon the ledger books.
Completely.
We have to abandon them and focus entirely on the economy of attention.
The economy of attention.
The sources argue, and I think pretty compellingly, that this person operates primarily not as a businessman seeking profit,
Right.
but as a media entity demanding perpetual ratings.
And that pivot from fixed assets like buildings to the volatile power of belief, that's what the sources are calling the defining feature of the new economy of the 21st century.
Exactly. We're exploring a system where brand allegiance, where personality cults and, the whole phenomenon of meme stocks can effectively generate capital out of thin air. Our goal is to provide you with the framework to understand this fundamental change. Because it extends far beyond this one singular figure. It influences everything from Silicon Valley valuations to modern political campaigning.
So our source materials, they're really a mix of things. They merge this deep analysis of brand value, high finance, and political economy. And they force us to grapple with a new financial reality. What happens when a person's name itself becomes the ultimate and maybe the most volatile financial instrument?
It's a huge question.
Okay, let's unpack this. We absolutely need to start by grounding ourselves in the most powerful conceptual tool this material gives us, which is that radical shift. The shift from wealth measured in steel and mortar to wealth measured in sheer belief. So in high finance, the whole foundation of valuation, it rests on tangibility, right?
Of course. Things you can touch.
Things you can touch and measure. We assess wealth by looking at commercial real estate, golf courses, airplanes, proprietary technology. Traditional capital, it expects measurable returns, stable asset bases, predictable cash flow.
The fundamentals.
The fundamentals. And while he certainly owns large physical assets, that's undeniable, the sources are unanimous on this point. His real financial power is derived from something completely separate from that real estate portfolio.
Precisely. The analysis we've seen identifies the true primary asset as something they call volatile and potent.
And that is?
His name. And this is where the conceptual heavy lifting really begins. The sources describe him as the first human being to successfully turn himself into a personalized sovereign fiat currency.
Wow. Okay, that's a profound statement. We should definitely explore the mechanics of that analogy right away. So when we talk about a national currency, fiat means its value is based on government decree and, collective trust. It's not backed by gold.
Right, it's backed by faith.
So here we're applying that same concept to an individual.
Yeah.
How does that actually function in terms of financial leverage?
Okay, so if the U.S. dollar's value isn't backed by a gold standard, but by the faith of the global market and the U.S. government's stability, then this personalized fiat currency is backed by the faith of a massive perpetual audience in the issuer's success. This is not about guaranteed solvency. It's about perceived omnipotence.
Perceived omnipotence. So it's not about the numbers in the bank, it's about the feeling he projects.
Exactly. His financial structure isn't underpinned by audited, verifiable profit margins. It is underpinned by audience perception, the faith of his political base, the consumers who buy the branded merchandise, and, this is the crucial part, the lenders who accept his valuation claims.
And the sources give some fantastic historical examples of how this belief literally dictated reality in his dealings.
I'm thinking about the process of getting a loan.
Oh, a perfect example.
So his organization would claim a particular property was worth, let's say, $600 million for the purpose of getting a loan.
Right. To a bank.
And then maybe claim it was worth $100 million for the purpose of paying taxes.
A significant difference.
A pretty big gap. And the point the sources make is that the true financial reality of that building was almost irrelevant. It was irrelevant until a bank or an insurer chose to believe one valuation over the other.
That is the critical pivot. That's the whole game. If the bank believes the $600 million valuation, that belief immediately converts into liquid financial reality for him.
It becomes leverageable debt.
Instantly. The building itself is just a prop for the performance of financial success. The source material refers to this as a phenomenon where belief, if it's projected loudly enough and consistently enough by the issuer.
And then accepted by the audience. And internalized by the audience, the banks, the consumers, whoever, it instantaneously creates financial truth.
And this is exactly why, as the sources note, generations of critics failed. They just kept missing the point. They kept analyzing him through the lens of a businessman.
Right. They were using the wrong toolkit.
They focused on the bankruptcies, the documented losses, and the simple fact that if you apply standard capital expenditure and operational cost metrics, the whole enterprise often looked underwater.
Because a businessman is beholden to the laws of mathematics, to quarterly reports, to shareholder satisfaction that comes from profit.
Sure.
But the sources insist he is operating on a completely different plane, that of a media entity. And a media entity has a totally different metric for success.
So a businessman needs profit and, positive equity. A media entity needs only one thing: ratings. The core thesis we really have to hold on to here is that the continuous flow of attention is the lifeblood. It is the commodity. I think the source puts it very starkly. It says something like, as long as the cameras are on, the credit lines stay open.
And that just changes the entire calculus of risk management, doesn't it? Think about it. If a business fails, say a casino goes bankrupt, but the personal brand, the name, remains intensely famous and dominates the news cycle,
then the failure is almost irrelevant to the bigger picture.
It's completely irrelevant to the overall value of the fiat currency. He can always license the name, sell more merchandise, or launch a totally new venture that capitalizes on that sustained attention.
Okay, let's pull a specific detail from the source material to really illustrate the financial weight of this fame premium. While we don't have the exact private contract figures, the analysis discusses these licensing deals. For example, the use of his name on buildings he had absolutely no ownership stake in.
Right, he was just renting out the name.
He was. And the fee paid for that license alone often exceeded the total annual profit margin of the development itself.
Let's just pause on that. That means the developers weren't paying for the building's prestige or its inherent quality.
Yo.
They were paying a massive premium purely for the attention the name guaranteed. It was a marketing expense disguised as a branding fee.
They were buying access to his audience. They were buying a piece of the ratings.
And that is the quantifiable evidence. That is the proof that the name as a pure asset commands a price that is completely divorced from any underlying corporate performance.
Which also helps explain the necessity of constant conflict and visibility.
Yeah.
If your goal isn't profit but ratings.
Then anything that drives attention is financially beneficial.
Right. And things like silence or calm or just routine business operations.
That's financial lethal.
It's lethal because it depreciates the value of the attention asset.
And this concept is so essential for you, the informed observer, to understand modern capital flow. We are in an era where brand equity, sustained by continuous media saturation, functions as pure liquidity. It allows for the creation of massive market capitalization, even in the total absence of traditional solvency. The traditional risk assessment models, the ones that focus on balance sheets, they're simply looking at the wrong ledger. They need to start measuring the size and the fervor of the audience.
So if we accept this premise, this idea of a personalized fiat currency, We have to look for the financial proof. We have to find the moment this idea was stress-tested in the public domain.
And the sources all point directly to one event.
The listing of his media company. Okay, so to move this analysis from, high-level monetary theory into concrete market reality, we had to turn to the ultimate case study, which is the public listing of Trump Media and Technology Group trading under that very familiar ticker symbol, DJT.
The sources state that this moment laid the mechanics of the attention economy bare for the world to see. It was all out in the open.
It was a financial collision, really. A collision between the traditional market and this new attention market. Let's start with the objective, rational market view that the source material provides.
Okay. By all established metrics, the company was a financial anomaly. I mean, that's putting it mildly.
It was hemorrhaging money, losing millions of dollars in a single year. And the total revenue it generated was, well, it was laughably small.
It was. The analysts compared its revenue to that of a modest collection of Starbucks franchises.
Exactly. So if you strip the name away, if this was just generic social media company A, what would the valuation be?
It would be zero. Or maybe even negative, given the amount of money it was losing. That's the baseline reality of asset-based finance.
But of course, as we know, that is not what happened. And this is where the divergence becomes just staggering.
The stock soared upon listing. It achieved a valuation that peaked near $8 billion.
$8 billion. Based on minimal revenue, zero clear path to profitability, and, significant operational risks.
So this is the point where we have to stop looking at the P&L statement and start trying to measure belief.
And the central question is why? Why did investors pour billions of dollars into this company?
The analysis in the sources is crystal clear on this, and I'm quoting here. People weren't buying a company. They were buying a piece of the man.
So they weren't assessing future earnings per share?
No, not at all. They were assessing their own loyalty and their desire to participate in a political and cultural movement. The sources explain that the stock functions as a pure mechanism for demonstrating allegiance. You were literally buying a share in the movement.
And so the value is tied directly to the continued prominence and power of the issuer of this fiat currency.
Directly.
The sources immediately connect this to the broader trend of meme stocks. We saw this with GameStop a few years ago. They're driven by collective enthusiasm, group coordination on social media, and this kind of anti-establishment fervor.
Right. The DJT stock is the personalized culmination of that exact phenomenon. It takes the concept of liquidity generated out of thin air and it grafts it onto a singular personality.
So what does that mean for the stability of the stock?
It means the stock's stability isn't maintained by its corporate board or its product innovation. It's maintained by the psychological and political fervor of its retail investor base. The market capitalization is, therefore, a direct real-time measure of audience belief.
The genius of it, or perhaps the alarming observation from the sources, is that the valuation doesn't depend on reaching new users or selling new ads.
No, that's irrelevant.
It depends entirely on sustaining the existing highly engaged base. As long as that loyalty is maintained, the valuation holds. That's the financial proof of the attention economy in action.
And this just raises these fundamental questions about investor responsibility and regulatory oversight that our sources spend a lot of time dissecting.
So how do you regulate this?
I don't know. If the asset isn't a building, but it's the collective sentiment of millions of loyal retail investors, how do you regulate against bubbles? How do you even measure risk?
If the price-to-earnings ratio is replaced by, a price-to-allegiance ratio.
Price to allegiance, I like that.
Right.
Then the regulatory frameworks that were designed in the 20th century become utterly obsolete. They're not fit for purpose.
Think about the implications for transparency, too. Traditional investing requires clear disclosures about financials, right?
Of course.
But here, the true financial health of the company is intrinsically linked to the political and media health of its founder. So can an investor truly assess the risk if the primary variable is the outcome of a legal battle or a political campaign rather than a sales report?
It's a great question, and the sources argue that this situation fundamentally challenges the whole idea of market efficiency. If the price of a stock is supposed to reflect its intrinsic value, and the intrinsic value is the attention,
then the market is acting efficiently.
Exactly. But it's acting efficiently according to rules that economists and regulators haven't yet learned how to quantify or control. So we are forced to admit that this $8 billion valuation is financially true, not because of profits, but because the belief is real and it is being actively traded.
So it provides the ultimate public, tangible proof.
Yes.
The proof that this fiat currency concept is functional. The name, the attention. It is money. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've established the external financial mechanics. We have the currency of belief, and we have the proof in the stock market. But to truly understand the relentless nature of this financial strategy, we have to turn to the significant psychological analysis in the sources. We need to move from the mechanisms of finance to the man's internal architecture.
Right. What's driving all of this?
And the sources insist that this decades-long obsession with accumulation is less about classical rational greed and far more about a profound psychological need for scorekeeping.
This is the engine. This is what's driving the whole machine. Money, in this particular worldview that the analysts describe, it ceases to be a means of exchange.
It's not for buying things.
It's not primarily for investment or for purchasing goods. It is transformed into the sole non-negotiable metric of existence.
Which means the goal isn't just to be rich. The goal is to win the game of being rich.
To win it perpetually, publicly, and irreversibly.
And the sources, they bring this very abstract concept into sharp focus with these specific, really stunning details that reveal the zero-sum nature of this internal scoreboard.
And the most famous one, the most powerful anecdote is about the check. The check for 13 cents.
13 cents. Just think about that act for a moment. Cashing a check for 13 cents. The sheer transactional effort required to process such a minuscule amount is, by any business standard, completely irrational.
It makes no sense. The stamp costs more.
Exactly. But the analysis explains this wasn't about the cash. It was about the principle. The source says it was just to prove he wouldn't leave money on the table.
And this one single tiny transaction reveals the grand psychological mechanism at play. Every penny represents a point on the scoreboard.
Oh boy.
To leave that 13 cents uncashed is to concede that point. It's to accept a loss, however tiny, against the universe or against the person who sent the check.
And that concession is an existential failure.
It is. The commitment to claiming every single point, no matter the cost in time or effort, is absolute.
So this scorekeeping mentality, it really explains the relentless litigation we see, the focus on winning public disputes, the constant need to assert victory.
The financial world, from this perspective, is not a market for collaboration and growth. It's a battlefield. And every single interaction is measured solely in terms of who accumulated more points, who won and who lost.
This pursuit of dominance brings us right to the core identity statement that the source material makes over and over again.
Which is that net worth is absolutely synonymous with self-worth. In this particular psychological framework, the two are completely inseparable.
That is a heavy, almost fatalistic premise. Because if the scoreboard is linked to the soul, the implications are immediate and severe when the numbers change.
The source material is unequivocal about this. It says, if the number goes down, the man diminishes. This means that any drop in perceived valuation, a low spot on the Forbes list, a regulatory fine, a civil judgment, it's not just a business setback.
It's an existential threat.
It's an attack on the self. And it demands a maximal, often very emotional defense.
And this reframes the nature of all the legal and financial struggles that we observe. The sources note that the fight over taxes or over valuations or over business losses, it's never just a logistical or a financial dispute.
No, it's an existential battle for his soul. He has to defend the number to defend the identity. If that number is successfully challenged, the fiat currency is questioned and the self-worth collapses.
And this psychological imperative feeds directly back into the economy of attention we were talking about.
It's a perfect loop. To sustain his self-worth, the score, he requires perpetual affirmation of that value. And that affirmation is delivered through fame, through the ratings and the attention.
So the psychological need for scorekeeping necessitates the continuous, noisy operation of the media entity.
It has to keep going.
Let's delve a little deeper into how this scorekeeping manifests in public behavior. The sources really emphasize the focus on public ranking. You know, the intense, often manual effort exerted to influence the perception of wealth among external arbiters, like financial magazines. This isn't just PR, is it?
No, it's identity maintenance. If the arbiters of public wealth, the Forbes list, for example, are the ones who define the score, then influencing them becomes the most crucial task of all. The sources detail how this involves this aggressive assertion of assets and a strategic denial of debt, all aimed at bolstering the perceived number that defines the self. This behavior, which often looks irrational from a conservative business perspective, is perfectly rational from the scorekeeping perspective.
And it also explains why controversy is sought out rather than avoided.
Absolutely. Controversy guarantees attention.
Attention guarantees high ratings.
And high ratings guarantee the perceived value of the name, the fiat currency.
So if the attention starts to fade, The currency depreciates.
And the psychological structure that supports the self-worth begins to crumble. The whole thing is at risk. Therefore, the need for perpetual scorekeeping mandates perpetual visibility. The score is the identity, and the identity requires the camera. It's a closed, self-sustaining, and internally logical loop where the financial, the psychological, and the media imperatives are all perfectly aligned.
And all of this brings us right to the current, incredibly tense scenario that's analyzed in the source material. You have this financial figure standing on the precipice of a high-stakes election, possessing, by some measures, billions on paper through this attention economy and assets like the DJT stock. But at the same time, simultaneously facing these massive legal judgments draining his critical cash reserves.
This is the ultimate moment of dynamic tension. It's where the two realities collide. On one side, you have the traditional analysts. They're applying solvency tests. They're looking at the civil fraud judgments, the hundreds of millions owed, the cash reserves required for bonds.
And they're predicting.
They confidently predict imminent financial doom, the collapse of this heavily leveraged operation. They are waiting for the moment the cash must meet the math.
But the sources caution against such a simple prediction. They really do. They frame this moment not as some financial inevitability, but as the world watching, to see if the magician has one last definitive trick.
Because the magician, as we said, operates on belief, not on traditional arithmetic.
So the key question, which the sources highlight, is about the ultimate leverage scenario. Can the highest firm of attention, which is the pursuit or the holding of the presidency, be successfully converted directly and immediately into liquid cash? Can political power be financialized?
And you have to consider the scale of attention involved here. Political power represents absolute, unavoidable attention. If his name's value as a fiat currency is backed by belief, then the presidency, or even the intense, dominating spectacle of running for it,
is the highest possible form of guaranteed backing.
It's the ultimate backstop. It ensures the name remains the most valuable commodity on the market.
And the sources speculate on the various mechanisms for this conversion.
Yeah.
I mean, how would that actually work?
They float a few ideas. Can the political movement itself be leveraged into unprecedented investment opportunities? Can global entities or loyal domestic investors view the attention asset as so solidified by political power that they are willing to inject massive amounts of liquidity into his businesses?
Liquidity that wouldn't be available to just any conventional real estate operator.
Exactly. Perhaps through things like bond offerings or strategic investment, money that flows in because of the political position, not the business fundamentals.
So the analysis suggests that political power does two crucial things for the fiat currency. First, it solidifies the inherent value of the name by maximizing attention.
Right. It puts it on every screen in the world.
And second, it potentially provides the necessary global stage and mechanisms to convert that attention premium into hard, usable capital when the legal bills come due.
Which means the cycle we talked about achieves its apex. The psychological demand for scorekeeping fuels the attention media entity,
which validates the fiat currency.
And the political pursuit is the ultimate guarantee that the attention, the asset, will never, ever dry up.
And this leads to the breathtaking complexity of his current financial status. Because depending entirely on which ledger you choose to analyze, the traditional one showing debt and judgments against cash flow.
Or the attention ledger.
Or the attention ledger showing perpetual fame and the $8 billion DJT valuation. He may simultaneously be the poorest rich man or the richest poor man on earth.
The answer hinges entirely on whether you are measuring gold reserves or collective human belief. It forces us to accept that he has successfully engineered two entirely separate parallel financial realities that just coexist. And the battle we're all watching is the struggle between those two realities, the math of the old world versus the faith of the new.
So we've covered some significant ground here for you, our listener. We started with that simple image of a red hat in a marble lobby, and we journeyed deep into monetary theory, into the function of a personalized fiat currency.
We provided the concrete market proof through the DJT case study.
And we explored the existential scorekeeping that seems to drive the entire decades-long process.
And what we've hopefully established is that this unique form of wealth, it really exists outside the jurisdiction of traditional accounting rules. Its health is defined entirely by perpetual audience engagement, by media dominance, and by the collective maintenance of a financial illusion.
And the source material leads us with a truly powerful, and I have to say, a somewhat unsettling concluding statement. It's one that synthesizes the entire paradox of the attention economy. It says, "But as long as we are talking about him, he has already won."
In this new economy, the sources conclude the ultimate metric of success is attention itself. If you are the subject of perpetual fascination, of debate, of financial speculation, then you are perpetually successful. By the metrics of the attention economy, he is the richest man who ever lived.
And this understanding is so critical for you, the learner, navigating the 21st century. It's no longer enough to just look at revenue statements. You have to understand that this model of attention-backed value is pervasive. It's informing everything from high-stakes politics to influencer marketing and high-tech valuations, where brand equity and loyalty can fundamentally and demonstrably outweigh traditional balance sheets.
The game has fundamentally changed, and we have to learn to read the rules of ratings and belief, not just the rules of revenue and cash flow.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought for you to carry forward. If attention is the new gold, and if we, the audience, the media, the consumers, are the ones continuously mining and granting that attention through our focus and our debate, what price do we ultimately pay for maintaining the value of this volatile new currency?